Welcome to the official Tennis.com podcast featuring professional coach and community leader, Kamau Murray.
Welcome to the Tennis.com podcast. I'm your host, Kamau Murray, and we are here with my friend, my brother, one of the greatest coaches in the game, been around 5 decades, coached multiple Hall of Famers, multiple teams to World Team Tennis Championships. He has watched the game evolve and change 10 different times, but he has stayed the same. His approach to the game is one I admire and one that I lean on when I'm across the world needing somebody to talk to. We are here with Craig Kardon. Craig, welcome.
Thank you, Kamau. Good to see you, buddy.
So you're one of the few, probably the only person still coaching that can say, I coached Martina Navratilova with Billie Jean King. I mean, first of all, to coach one of the game's greatest. Tell me about that.
Well, it was a situation where I had practiced with Martina years before, when I was before college. During college, she came back to Dallas. We had a relationship of, mutual respect of playing together and just enjoying the competition as a hitting partner. And as time went on, I retired from playing 1987-ish, and she was being coached by Tim Gullickson, and we were practicing together. And she just approached me out of the blue and just said, I want you to travel with me and coach me. But the label was a little different. It was like, she's like, I don't need a coach now. I just want someone to travel. Right. And I said, well, I'm not going to retire. I'm not going to give up my job unless I'm the coach. And she's probably thinking, oh yeah, well, whatever, I'll give you whatever title you want, but I want you to travel with me, hit with me, and continue to have this, chemistry where you push me. And I was clearly over my head, and she was number 2 in the world at the time. Monica knocking, Jennifer knocking at the door, Steffi kicking her butt. And she suffered some losses after winning a bunch of tournaments, which was expected. And I remember running into Billie Jean, and we had a conversation, and I did not know, but she had reached out to Billie and, wanted her to help her, and said, I'm going to get rid of Craig, but, I want you to help. Well, how's it with Craig? She's like, great. But, she's like, I'll help you, but you can't get rid of Craig. It's not his fault. Right. And so I immediately went into mentor mode with Billie Jean, her helping me help Martina, because she wasn't going to be there week in and week out.
Right.
And we actually formed a great relationship, and I'm forever grateful to Billie Jean King. But I learned so much about the game, and Martina opened up as the champion she is. And I learned so much from her, and that experience is, I will never forget.
Yeah, I remember when I was first introduced to you, everybody was like, oh, you got to know Craig. He's been out here longer than you've been alive. So you've been coaching for 50 years. And in that time,
no. I'm 60. So, but 26 years old, I really started, but it's been over 5 decades, I guess.
Yeah.
That's kind of
over
crazy.
5 different decades.
Yeah. 80s, 90s. Yeah.
And in that time, you coached Lindsay Davenport, Mary Pierce twice, Zena, Xavier Molise, Coco Vandeweghe, Alexandra Stevenson, been a USTA national coach. Let's go back to Mary Pierce, because I'm now back coaching Sloan. Everyone's like, oh, you're back again for the 3rd time.
Right.
You coached Mary Pierce twice. And I try to help everybody understand when you coach somebody to a Grand Slam title, then that
Well, I
relationship.
coached Xavier twice, Mary twice, Coco twice. So, yes, it's different.
It's
Come
like,
back.
yeah, but the relationship is so close that you may like sever and break up, but it's always kind of like never on a bad note. It's just, hey, I need to hear something different, or priority shift, whether it be family, have a baby, whatever it is, right? But it's never as antagonistic as the media would make it seem, or others want to assume it is. And that's why I would try to tell people, hey, you coach somebody to a Grand Slam, the relationship is permanent. Tell me about why and how some of the relationships ended and then started again.
Well, I think I'll start with, obviously Martina retired. Mary Pierce was at a point in my life where I was trying to settle down and not travel as much. So I took a job with the USTA, and Mary was actually on a high, like top 10. We had a great year together, and it was a personal choice for me not to travel as much. So that's when I took the job with the USTA. That was 1998, 97. And my relationship with the USTA ended. During that time, Alexandra Stevenson came up, and she was coached by Ray Ruffles, who had some health issues at the time. So I took over that role looking after her, and she made semis in Wimbledon, wanted me to travel and coach her full time. I chose not to do that, and stayed with the USTA. Then Mary was on a comeback trail and asked me to help her again. And she had a good few weeks, and then tore her meniscus, tore her knee, and that was the last match she ever played professionally. And I believe it was in Vienna, Austria. So, but her trust in me goes beyond tennis. I mean, we've kept in touch, and she's advised me on some of my future relationships, players I've coached, and been a mentor in that regard. I've coached a few players that she's worked with, and we've kept in touch. So Xavier Malisse, the same thing happened. When was it? 2002. He made the semis. He was 19 years old. I helped him for a year and a half, roughly. And then he came to me towards the end of his career, wanted me to help him. And so we agreed to like a 6-month deal. But the big thing, Kamau, is a trust, and they don't want to go through, grooming another coach, or they know what they need. And they trust that you know what they need better than anybody else that they're going to hire and have to train and go through that. So, it works both ways, but, you're basically family without being called family.
Agreed.
Right.
And you had the privilege of coaching Lindsay Davenport too, one of the biggest hitters in the history of the game. What was that like?
Yeah, I mean, Lindsay was only 18, 19, and 7 in the world. She just rose right up there. It was a challenge for her and me because, I was recommended to her. I was basically forced upon her, really without her knowing me, and we had to get to know each other. And, there was some learning curves for both of us. But she came to Dallas, trained with me, and we had a great time. There was good chemistry there. Had a great run. It was time for her to move on, and it was a good relationship. I learned quite a bit from Lindsay in her game style, that how she trusted what she does well, and just to go with that bigger picture. And I consulted with Robert Van Hoff, a longtime coach, quite a bit. And, Lindsay doesn't need a whole lot of like really coaching. It's just support, direction, a few pointers. I mean, she has the skills, she always had, and a great competitor, and just her knowledge of the court and how she used her game really helped me as a coach realize strengths and weaknesses of players with her game style.
Now, you've obviously got a long list of players. And one of the things I think the challenge with starting with a new player is when that first week on the court, knowing how much to say and when not to speak, right? And I always say, like, with a young kid, you talk once every 3 strokes. With a decent junior, you probably talk once every 5 strokes. With a pro, you're probably talking once every 7 to 9 strokes. Some, you talk once every 10 minutes, right? How did you navigate that on, starting so many new relationships and sort of feeling out when to coach, when to shut up, when to let them figure it out, trying not to overcoach, trying not to annoy them, right? Because that's part of it is like, look, I just want to hire somebody that can get me organized and not annoy the hell out of me, right?
Yeah, I mean, basically, okay, they've hired you. Your presence is there. So your understanding of what their expectations are is 0. You don't really know. So like for me, it's just a, hit or miss. You talk a little bit, see how that goes, or you don't say anything, see how that goes. And, from experience, I can just tell you different situations of, yes, I've talked too much, or yes, I haven't said enough. And that goes on the whole career because you're always doing a dance. You're always trying to figure out, because you're on their side. You're playing every point. So you want to be in there, but yet you don't want to overcoach, and you don't want to not say something that needs to be said, especially in practice. You got to point out that's where you need to be a little tougher. It's just, make sure you're crossing the T's, dotting the I's. Don't let stuff go unsaid in practice, for sure. Mm-hmm. Matches are a little different because they're emotional. There's only so much coaching you can do, at least on the WTA side, the ATP side for sure, but it all goes on. I've learned that you get the better results with the less that you say and how you say it. There has to be no judgment in your critique of what goes on and just a suggestion, but yet there's also kind of, okay, this is really important, so you need to do this, or this requires a discussion. How do you feel in this situation of what your choice is versus what I think is the right way, and what the reality and what the statistics and what the numbers say, because we're supposed to know all that stuff, right. By the way. We're supposed to be the answer, all right? And, when you're on the hot seat and everything's going great or bad, they look over at you and you're it, so.
I always found it to be my challenge is match day. It is in the warm-up, observing how they are, right? And yeah, I would say the matches that we lost, that I'm sitting there in the middle of the match regretting, are the matches where the warm-up wasn't going great, mm-hmm. maybe in a little bit of a mood, and I call it poke the bear, right? Where it's kind of like, they'll work it out. We got about 3 hours till match time. They'll be fine. They'll work it out, right? And then you get there and you down 0-3 and you like, oh shit, they didn't work it out, right? Mm-hmm. So I would say in my career, I can name probably 5 or 6 matches where I sit back, I definitely should have poked the bear, right? And then the match day
Really?
2, challenge number 2 is after the match, knowing when to poke the bear, because the bear has to be poked after the match. Is it
Oh yeah.
while they're on the bike? Is it let them have a couple hours to themselves and then wait till dinner, right? And then do you go right at them, or do you say, so what do you think about the match? You know what I mean? That's sort of, my game.
Yeah. That's the dance we have to do, and know when to say things. And I haven't really like a pre-match warm-up. I can't say through my experience with that there was any magical thing said or not said during a pre-match warm-up. Okay. It's what it is. It is getting a sweat, making sure you're okay. The basic thing is what's not said. Okay. And that's overthinking a serve, overthinking a certain shot, pointing attention to something that they're not finishing, because that will become a huge thing during the match. You just don't want to pay attention to something that's not that big a deal. Maybe it could be a big deal, but if they don't think it is in the warm-up, then it won't be in a match, you see?
Yeah.
And I think more importantly, it's how you interact after the match with the time you take between let's address this, giving the player an opportunity to, have some space and think about things, or, right after the match to walk with them, let them talk first. Always. I tell coaches, let your player talk first, because that's where you get the information and what they're feeling on the court. You're not the one playing the match. Although we play every point, we're not the ones feeling what they feel. And that gives you a lot of feedback. And it can change your critique and how you handle telling them the reality of what actually happened and how they can improve.
Well, let me ask you this then, because everybody's different. I've had times where after the match wouldn't say a word, won't even go to dinner together, see you the next day on the way to the airplane, right after a loss.
Yeah.
Who on your player roster gave you the most sort of anxiety after a loss where you're like, oh, what do I say? Do I say anything? Let me just get on the bus and go home.
Oh, man. I'm not going to throw anybody under the bus here, but there's been a few heated conversations that happened right after. And maybe it could have been the coach who should have taken a pass at like really addressing that. Because, as I said, we play every point, and sometimes even though I know I'm right and you need to say something, it's basically, you got to wait. You got to wait. Martina, basically, she wanted to talk right away. That was one of the few players that she just wanted to vent and then wanted my opinion. Mary, not so much. Xavier, oh my, let's not talk for a couple of days and have dinner and then maybe discuss it. Bogey, Alex Bogomolov, always talk right away. Some players, you need to have that conversation, but you have to wait for the right moment, and for them to be calm, you to be calm and say the right thing,
So what do you think about Encore Coaching? Because when you started, or you've been coaching over
there
5
wasn't
decades, right?
Yeah, no, there wasn't any Encore Coaching.
Right, and I mean, honestly, it was always signaling, coaching, gesturing, nonverbals.
Patrick Montague said it best. He just said, there's always coaching. Yeah, it happens, but it happens more. We're not cheating, but the player knows you as a person. We're communicating without saying anything, So Encore Coaching can be beneficial, I think done the right way, of course. I think it's more of a marketing gimmick. The way it's been approached is they're trying to showcase it, and it's kind of backfired a little bit because you're putting two people in a personal relationship that can be explosive, and you're trying to market something, statistics, or you get your notebook out and all that. I throw that out the window. Just that we do that before. Okay, we maybe look at our phone now, the technology, and look at some numbers, but we're not going to be throwing things out there and necessary curveballs to get the player thinking too much. I think the on-court coaching is good in a way that the fans see the relationship of where it can be helpful, but it can also backfire and see a blame game, or an admonishment that doesn't need to be publicly aired. Right.
Well, now they have the coaching from the sideline. I remember just a couple of weeks ago, I was, obviously during the match, Sloan was playing and everybody was like,
yeah,
they can see you coaching. I'm like, it's allowed, right? They're on the
yes.
side of the court. You're not interrupting the flow of the match. You
right,
can now
right.
speak. And like, people don't know that now, but I think it gives so much more freedom for it to be more natural.
Yes.
And I think that, we've got to sort of catch up to the other sports and, sort of help.
I agree with you. Because I was from a different decade of, because tennis for me was taught so much of, once you do your work and you're on the court. And so there's still an innate thing in me of, I'm always kind of like whispering, or is this all right? I'm
right.
saying it kind of, no, it's okay. Like, just yell it,
Right.
And I've had players say to me, look, I'll get the coaching violation. If you say something good, I'm fine with that.
Right.
But I've also had players that I've said something and they wanted it said, and then there's a fine there, but I'm the guy who gets like looked at as I'm cheating,
It's coming out your check. That fine's coming out your check.
Exactly.
I always say my check is big enough to take that fine.
There's a shock harpier in there
I always say my check isn't big enough to take that fine. You got to take that fine.
Well, it would have been had she not fired me right before she made top 10.
That was timely.
I didn't say that out loud, did I?
Oh, yeah, no, that's all right.
Anyway, she was a challenge. She was such a great fighter. And for her weapons that she had, making 11 in the world is a great achievement for her.
So now,
and the stuff we went through, actually, as an Israeli player going to Dubai, that was something I've never experienced. I'm half Jewish, and I understand the racism with the Arabs, but we got there, had 13 bodyguards. We're not allowed to associate with the players, had our own hotel, guards, everything. It was something I've never experienced.
Mm. So you talk about, sort of just your travels and racism in different environments. What has been your most memorable tournament you've been to? Not necessarily venue related or city related, but just circumstance besides that one.
Memorable tournaments. There's been a few, especially with Martina. One of them was in Rome playing late at night. She lost in singles, had to play doubles. She was playing with Mary Jo. They were playing Capriati and Celis, the second night match in Rome. So we're talking past midnight. The lights go out. I'm talking all the lights went out. And I think we got back at 4:00 in the morning, and she had made the final, and they lost to Capriati and Celis, and both of them were staying back on their serve. Never seen anything like it, and won. And Martina looks over to me. We're having late night room service or something, like, oh, isn't this a glamorous life? It was anything but. I remember Martina playing in France, indoor tournament. She's seeded 2, 3, 4, I can't remember. We get to the court. Those days you get 32 draw. She has a bye, so she plays Wednesday. Monica's on the other half. We hit maybe 10 minutes on the court, and it's slow. The court is slow. And so she immediately starts crying, saying, I've got no chance to win here. 0. Gets to the final, and I provided one of my best game plans ever of how to beat Monica. She beats Monica, and I thought, God, this is awesome. Great. In the celebration, she wins a car, and she gives a speech, and it was to dedicate to someone who was watching that week, and nothing said about me. And I just thought that was hilarious. That's great. Okay. Well, good. Good for you. At least you won the match.
Coaching over 5 decades, you've probably had a few of those where they held the trophy.
Yeah, there were a few of those.
Oh man. So I remember
Xavier released one of the memorable match when he was playing Nalbandian up 2-1 in the semis, 4-1, and God, it wasn't against Nalbandian, was it? Yeah, I think it was Nalbandian, court 1, and he had this AFib that it wasn't diagnosed. So when he got kind of emotional and nervous, his heart would race. And it happened during, I don't know, second set, third set, and he had to be taken off the court. And the All England Club, the first thing that they did was they wanted him to sign an agreement in order to let him go back on the court and hold them not liable if he had a heart attack or something. Mm-hmm. He said, I'm going back. I'm going to play. And that actually gave him fire to go back and play. But I've never seen anything like that he had to leave the court, get evaluated, and they wanted a signed agreement for him to go back on the court. He ended up losing, but played a great match. Nalbandian, history, made the final. It was Leighton Hewitt's first Wimbledon title. But Xavier could have won that tournament. I promise you. He was legit, playing best of all those guys.
So one of the people I'm looking at, you're probably my favorite person to see after a match. Because you have this look and it's words you say, I know, you don't even have to say anything. I get it.
Yeah.
I know how you feel. This is a hard job, right? And I've only been doing it 8 years.
Yeah.
You've been doing it way longer. How and why do you keep doing it? Because now you're working with Christina McHale, who's a great talent, a great American talent.
Just great girl. Yeah.
Great person. Easy to be around, easy to travel with.
Yes.
So what keeps you out here, right? Because some of the stops, especially when you take on a young player, right, who's maybe not automatically in all the Premier Fives, maybe not automatically in the Slam, what keeps you out on tour doing this versus at the country club?
Coaching, just the challenge, figuring out the pieces and helping that player win a match that day that they didn't think that they belong, and the training, watching them get better than they thought they could be, but also addicted to the winning of, the success and watching the player just achieve something, and as much as I hate it, the anxiety of the competition, but I love it too. The adrenaline, I wish I was out there, I love competing. I love that. And, you got some skin in the game, right? Because you care.
Right.
And obviously I wouldn't be doing this if I didn't care. And definitely not doing it just to take the check, but you're invested emotionally. And players know that. They just do. And it's just for me, it's like a puzzle come out of like, what's going to do it for this player? How can I help them? Because I want to leave this situation knowing that I made them a better player. And also I'm learning from them to be a better coach as well.
Well, it's funny. You say I'm going to leave the situation. I think one of the things Willis Thomas said to me when I first started, he said, "Hey, young fella, you're not a real coach until you get fired." Right. And so
Yeah.
I think that listening to you talk about, just the goal of helping the player improve, knowing eventually it will end, helps the process, right? Just sort of not be so tenuous, right? Because you understand you have a job. It's not forever, right?
Right.
You've got to leave this situation better than when you were
on both sides of the coin.
Both sides.
I think too many players don't understand that.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes they choose coaches because they want the quick fix, or they choose coaches because that's what's going to be comfortable for them and not make the right choice. But there's a start and an ending, but you're going to have a relationship anyway, I would hope, further, than tennis, just in general. And you do go into the professional relationship knowing, hey, this is your job, this is a goal, we're going to get there, and it's a challenge for both of us, right? But if it's not working, sometimes it's almost a job of the coach to confront, but the coach doesn't always do that. Job security, whatever, but if it's not working, I mean, it's not healthy for either person to stay in that.
So you were here back in the day when it was the Virginia Slims tour.
Yes.
And obviously there's a lot less tournaments, especially on the WTA side in America, in the States. Tournaments have come on and off the calendar 1 year, 2 years, then they're gone. What do you think we need to do? Because ultimately, even when I work with kids every day, right? And you're selling them on, whether it be get a college scholarship, or if you're a woman, you make a great living, right? Or the best living in all of female sports playing tennis, right? 9 out of the top 10 highest paid female athletes play tennis. So you're selling this sport to these young kids, but then tournaments are not consistently staying in the States, right? And you've been around and seen the tour evolve. What do you think we have to do to sort of get and keep more tournaments in the States so that we can continue to sell a realistic dream to the next group of youngsters?
Well, first of all, I think the USTA needs to do more with investing in tournaments in our own country and put money into smaller events so that there's more job opportunities, so that there's more competitive opportunities, and not make the nationals or sectional tournaments so prohibitive to competing. Most of these kids come out, don't play sets. They train. They don't compete. I don't know what the answer is, but we have to find a way to make it more fun and more attractive for players in the US to compete against each other, to play more tournaments, whether it's club events, UTR, inter club events, clubs against other clubs, academies against other academies, We got to make it more fun for these kids to compete against each other and not just train.
I agree. I think that at the junior level, we create a lot of professional practice players. Right?
Yes.
And when you, even when these players listen to the commentators, we talk about the word compete. I mean, even at this level in the coaching, you probably often say, listen, just compete, right? Or this player competes well, right? And it's most often said about players from overseas, right? Who may have come from challenging sort of situations and tennis was their way out. They just compete. And I agree that, you know, a lot of times I hear, even from current coaches on tour, the post-match sort of like the speech after a loss is, you did some good things, right? But at the end of the day, you didn't win, right? And I think that the goal when you step on the court is not to play well. Like the goal is to win the match, right? At the professional level, you got to win. You try to win the match.
You just have to be better than the other person that day for that hour and a half. Yeah. It doesn't matter what it looks like. I don't care how you get there, but getting there and winning is the most important thing when you want to play professional tennis. Yes. Okay.
Yes.
Bottom line, it's just, you got to get it done. Right. I mean, watching Jensen Brooksby, how he gets it done, watching Coco Gauff, how she gets it done. It's just amazing to see the difference in what they do point by point of how they compete. Right. And the arguments, well, how'd they get that way? I think most of it is just inherent with their personality. I mean, they just compete well, but they've made a decision, right? They've made a decision to when they play a match, a tennis match, they want to win. They don't just want to play well.
Right.
They actually want to win.
Right.
You know, they don't want to come off and go, yeah, well, I you know, hit all these forehand winners, or
I did some good things.
Well. Hey, I won. They want to come off. Maybe they didn't play well, so they're like, yeah, I played like crap, but hey, I still won.
Right.
Okay.
Right. I agree. I think we fall back on, you did some good things, you made some progress, but at the end of the day, the job is to try to win the match. You know, if you gotta slice your way to the finish line, slice your way to the finish line. You gotta moonball the way. Let's just get to the finish line. No, let's win, right?
Yes.
You know, no consolation prizes. Well, man, I wanted to thank you for coming on. You're one of the guys I respect. You know, when I see you in the elevator, I'm always like, hey, brother, let's go to church. You know, you got to have somebody on tour week in, week out that keeps you sane. You can confide in, and you know they understand where you are, even without you saying it. So, you know, you're that dude for me, and I always appreciate you. So I wanted to just, man, thank you for taking your time tonight to spend this time with us. And, you know, for those who are listening, Craig Kardon is like a legend in the game, right? Literally been coaching over 5 decades, from team tennis to Hall of Famers, to juniors, to club tennis, right, at the country club. I mean, he knows the game in and out, and is a good person. So we want to thank Craig for coming on, brother, and I will see you soon.
Thank you, Kamau. Always a pleasure talking to you. I'll look forward to seeing you soon.
All right, brother. Thank you. This has been the Tennis.com podcast with our this week's guest, Craig Kardon, and we will see you next week.